Thank you, Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Cummings. I'm pleased to be here before you today as the committee examines the management structure of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. As General Counsel, I supervise a staff of approximately 110 people. My office reports to the full Commission and provides a full range of legal services, including counsel and representation to both the Commission and to the offices that report to the Commission or NRC Chairman, and to the offices that report to Mr. Borcher, the Executive Director for Operations, often referred to as the NRC staff. As General Counsel, I am responsible for providing legal counsel to the Chairman and the other Commissioners, as well as the senior agency staff. I often interact with the Chairman and with the other Commissioners, and I strive to be fully responsive to the needs of all Commissioners in carrying out these responsibilities. I've been a career employee with the NRC since 1978. I began my legal career as an attorney in what was then called the Office of the Executive Legal Director, where my initial duties primarily involved enforcement and oversight. I then served as a legal assistant and then executive assistant to Vice Admiral retired Kenneth M. Carr, who was a commissioner and then later chairman of the agency from 1989 to 1991. Upon conclusion of Chairman Carr's term, I became the director of the Commission's Office of Appellate Adjudication, the office that drafts the Commission's adjudicatory orders. Subsequently, I served for more than a decade as the agency's Deputy General Counsel, where my responsibilities included overseeing legal representation of the staff in NRC administrative proceedings. In April 2009, former Chairman Klein initiated my appointment to serve as General Counsel, which was subsequently approved by the Commission. These diverse positions have given me substantial understanding of the legal framework governing Commission operations, particularly the Atomic Energy Act, the Energy Reorganization Act of 1974, and the Reorganization Plan No. 1 of 1980. The Energy Reorganization Act, of course, establishes the Commission, and with respect to its members, provides that each shall have equal responsibility and authority in all decisions and actions of the Commission, shall have full access to information relating to the performance of the duties or responsibilities, and shall have one vote. The Chairman is granted particular duties as the official spokesperson of the agency and as the principal executive officer with respect to the agency's executive and administrative functions, and as reflected in the Reorganization Plan. In carrying out these duties, the Energy Reorganization Act instructs the Chairman to see that the faithful execution of the policies and decisions of the Commission, and that he shall be governed by the general policies of the Commission and by such regulatory decisions, findings, and determinations as the Commission may be by law be authorized to make. As I have advised the Commission, the NRC's enabling legislation reflects that the structure of the agency is framed around two core principles: the rule of the majority and the delegation of executive leadership to the Chairman, which includes carrying out the Commission's policies. In providing legal advice and counsel to the Commission, I am ever mindful of these principles and believe they were intended to work in harmony to ensure the effective operation of the NRC. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Mr. Burns, you've done a very good job in your opening statement of explaining that, for whatever reason, Congress gave incredible authority to ignore the other four commissioners to the Chairman, right?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, what the question?
That the powers, the executive powers, are virtually everything for the Chairman. You know, that's basically what you said in your opening statement.
I don't think that is what I said. I said that there are two principles at play. The one principle, majority rules, and the other one, that executive leadership has been focused through the reorganization plan in the Chairman. Now, in doing that,
but executive leadership in a normal company is anything that the majority of the board thinks is wrong by the executive is in fact second-guessable by the board. In this case, you're saying that's not the case.
I don't believe I said that at all.
Well, but you're the legal definer. If three of the commissioners think the Chairman is dead wrong in administration, executive, or other activities, in this case, four of them think he's wrong on many occasions, Shouldn't that, in fact, be determinative of his behavior? Or are you saying that he has the authority to ignore them in his dealing with ordering staff, some 4,000 staff around?
I'm not going to comment on the Chairman's behavior.
No, I'm not asking for the behavior. I'm asking about authority.
With respect to his authority, a majority of the Commission, particularly in policy matters, adjudications, and rulemaking, set the policy of the agency, and the Chairman is honor-bound to carry that out. With respect to administrative matters, for the most part, administrative matters are delegated to the Chairman. There are some specific examples or exceptions within the reorg plan. Appointments, for example, Mr. Borchard's appointment and my appointment, he initiates, but the full Commission approves.
Okay, so there's a few times in which he has to go to his board. The rest of the time, he runs the show.
And that's the contemplation under the reorganization plan.
Okay. Clearly today, we were mostly talking about his management failures, at least relative to the 4,000 staff members and the 4 commissioners. But one very quick question. I heard Mr. Tierney read verbatim the law that allowed this emergency powers. Was Japan under the regulation of this commission?
No, and I don't think
So you issued an opinion that everything he did was legal and within his jurisdiction, and I heard the verbatim, and now I'm a layperson, so I want to be told why I didn't understand, but I heard, I think, the complete phrase of authority, and we're talking about halfway around the world, a nuclear power plant, and actually several reactors, were in distress, and he asserted unilateral right to completely dismiss any participation by his commission. That power under what was read to us today, and I'm not an expert on it, now you are, that power was limited to the 102 sites in the U.S. Nowhere did it appear, and I guess some other sites, but nowhere did it appear to have anything to do with a foreign sovereign nation and their reactors, did it? The intent of that statute, that right.
Mr. Chairman, the interpretation I gave to that statute and to those provisions in the reorg plan were not that the Chairman was suddenly the nuclear regulator of the country of Japan. What it had to do is that during the question I was asked, during the course of the accident, was when the emergency center was stood up and the Chairman was in the ops center, and the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission was asked for information regarding recommendations to protect U.S. citizens in Japan and U.S. servicemen through the ambassador and through the administration. He asked me what the question was it within his purview to communicate that information? I gave him the opinion that, yes, it was. This was not an usurpation of all the powers
okay, and my time has long expired. I wanted to just make clear that you gave him an opinion, so it's not him asserting some unilateral, but you're telling him that that phrase, that's part of the law, gave him the authority to lock out his 4 commissioners. That wasn't the main reason today. We were talking about management, so it's important for me to understand that, because that action, which was not the focus of this hearing, if there's a mistake, it's yours, not his.
Yes, and there was no mistake on my part.
Well, I think there was a big damn mistake.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr.
But that's
Chairman,
a separate. But that is a judgment call, not a legal call.
No,
and
that's a legal judgment call. And my legal judgment, given the intention of the President of the United States in 1980 in issuing the plan and providing for the concentration under emergency circumstance of power into the Chairman, that the Chairman acted reasonably. I've had no commissioner tell me that my view is wrong. I followed the opinion of my predecessor advising Chairman Reserve after 9/11, when there was not a particular threat to a U.S. power plant or facility.
Thank you. The ranking member is recognized.
Thank you very much. May I have 8 minutes, Mr. Chairman? Thank you very much. Following the Fukushima disaster, the NRC took a number of actions related to the emergency, including ensuring that 2 U.S. West Coast nuclear plants would remain safe from possible tsunami effects, and standing up an emergency operations center at the NRC to monitor events as they unfolded in Japan. The operations center remained in monitoring mode to assist Japan and the multitude of U.S. citizens in that country, and to deal with the ongoing emergency at the Fukushima plant. Mr. Burns, As the NRC General Counsel, you wrote a memo on March 17, 2011, and your memo concludes that the chairman had the legal authority under his emergency powers to issue the press release that provided the 50-mile protective guidance for United States residents and other interests in Japan. In that memo, you said this, and I quote, "The chairman's actions fit within his authorities under Section 3 of the Reorganization Plan, under which all authorities vested in the Commission pertaining to an emergency are transferred to the chairman." Mr. Burns, is that correct?
That's correct. That's in my memorandum.
And can you tell us simply how the chairman's actions were proper under current law?
Yes, and Ranking Member Cummings, the other thing I would emphasize, it was not only, I think, a reasonable representation of the emergency powers, but as the official spokesperson of the agency, he had information that was developed by the staff and communicated that. So even if you disagree with respect to emergency powers, I think as a spokesman he could do that. The point I made, and I actually think you read the quote from President Carter during the testimony of the commissioners, is the purpose of this of the plan in Section 3 was to focus the emergency response responsibility in a single person, the chairman. That was a finding coming out of the 3 Mile Island accident. And I'm looking at that, and again, looking at the memo of my predecessor to Chairman Meserve, I felt, though it was a novel question, which I acknowledge in the memo, I thought that was a reasonable judgment.
And you were using your legal judgment, your legal expertise, is that correct?
Yes, I was, sir.
Some have alleged that the chairman should not have used his emergency authorities to respond to the Fukushima crisis because the incident did not, and I think this is what Chairman Issa was going to, did not involve a U.S. nuclear facility or materials licensed or regulated by the Commission. But in your memo, you obviously disagree. You said that you do not view the language of the Reorganization Act of 1980 as, and I quote, I'm quoting you, limiting the scope of the chairman's emergency response authority only to incidents involving particular NRC licensed facilities, end of quote. Is that right?
That's correct.
And in your memo, you pointed to an opinion by former NRC General Counsel following the attacks on 9/11. Here's what you said, and I quote, "I note that the former General Counsel, Sear gave a similar opinion in the context of an agency response to 9/11-2001 terrorist attacks and determining that the absence of an actual event or damage to a nuclear facility or materials did not limit the chairman's authority to exercise his emergency powers." Mr. Burns, can you explain what that 2001 opinion said and why it's useful for understanding how the chairman exercised his authorities during the Fukushima crisis?
Certainly. Briefly stated, after the 9/11 attacks, the NRC again stood up its emergency center, I think primarily in a monitoring mode or an enhanced monitoring mode. There was again no specific threat to a particular U.S. facility. It kept in that operation for a few months, and the chairman Meserve at the time, I think some of his commissioners wondered, well, how long is this going to go on? And I think he asked the General Counsel Sear, to give an opinion. And her opinion, again, she said, we understand what, in terms of the text in the reorg plans, but she said, looking at again at President Carter's transmittal statement and looking at the general purpose is to focus the emergency response responsibility in the single official, that was a reasonable action on her part to do. I mean, it was a reasonable action on the part of Chairman Meserve in the 9/11 context to do, and I adapted that. And again, I concede it was a novel question.
Now, Mr. Burns, it's been alleged that the chairman, in violation of his statutory responsibilities, does not keep the commission properly informed. In your transcribed interview with the committee staff, however, you stated that the individual commissioners have a wide variety of ways to get information they need to do their jobs. For example, any commissioner can ask agency staff for information, and each commissioner holds regular meetings with senior NRC staff. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In your interview, you said this, and I quote, The Commission can ask for information within its functions, and it's not restricted to asking for the information that the Chairman thinks that the Commissioners ought to have. They can ask for anything within those functions. There's some balancing, again, about potential burdens and all that, but essentially that's a fairly powerful tool, end of quote. Is it fair to say that each Commissioner has tools at his or her disposal to keep themselves informed?
I think it is, and I think that's what both the Energy Reorganization Act and the Reorganization Plan provide. Could I make, there's one footnote I would add to that, Mr. Cummings, and that's this. In matters involving the budget, the Chairman's responsible for budget presentation and budget development. And so there's actually, the view that we have is that in terms of the timing, there's some influence in terms of the timing. It doesn't mean that the Commission can't get the information, but it is not real time because, again, the contemplation of the reorg plan is that the Chairman presents a budget. Once it's presented, then information is fair game to the Commissioner.
Now, did you also say that, did you inform committee staff that during your transcribed interview that you were unaware of any instances in which the Chairman withheld information or failed to inform the Commission in breach of his statutory responsibilities?
Yes, I'm not aware of them.
All right. Is it fair to say that each Commissioner, Mr. Burns, can you describe to the committee what you believe the statute requires of the Chairman in terms of keeping the Commission informed?
I think in reorganization, the reorganization plan in Section 2, 2C, or 2D talks about the Chairman's responsibility and the EDO through the Chairman. It defines that or outlines that responsibility. And with respect to that, that can be implemented through the Commission's internal procedures in terms of information flow and the like. And as you described from my interview, is that Commissioners can ask staff for information. The last thing I would note is that the statute also provides, in effect, a safety valve, that if any employee or officer of the Commission believes that there is critical safety information or security information the Commission should be aware of, it can communicate with the Commission.
And finally, do you believe that individual Commissioners have any obligation to seek out information they believe they need?
Well, I think that each Commissioner has to decide for themselves what information they need in carrying out their responsibilities, and I think just as a matter of their functioning, they have an obligation and I think an ability to do that.